Welcome to the Winning Move Podcast. I'm your host, Stratt Brown. I interview successful entrepreneurs from around the world to see what moves they've made in their lives to get successful and, more importantly, stay successful. I'm here to make sure you can create a better life for you and your family. Let's tune in. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Winning Move Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have another amazing guest, really like the podfather of real estate podcasts, and one of the most down-to-earth people I've ever met. And I don't, you're amazing, bro. Thank you so much for coming on. His name's Alex Pardo, Flip Empire podcast, had a massive wholesaling company and everything else. And he's the one person I talked to where lifestyle and mindset were huge to you. And like no one else we really talked to in that space really resonate, or they don't ever talk about it. It's all just push, build something that you hate.
Yeah. Well, my man, that's a lot to live up to. I appreciate your words and the compliment. I'll let it sit on me, but it's you and I feel like from the moment we hopped on that raft in Charlotte, North Carolina, we went semi-white water rafting. We connected, dude. You're a cool cat. Love to see what you're doing in our space with the podcast. And so it's great to be on your show.
Thank you so much, man. So let's give people a little bit of background of what you did, how you got into real estate and really got into business.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So, born and raised here in Miami, come from my parents are Cuban. I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. In fact, I'm the very first, and so far the only one. But my parents instilled in me, Stratton, a lot of just work ethic, dedication, perseverance. I didn't grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth, but I certainly didn't have a rags to riches story either. And I remember, growing up, I was always into sports, baseball, basketball, MMA. Back then it was karate and things of that nature. And I remember growing up in the baseball park, and dude, I would buy baseball cards and I'd flip them for like $1. I'd flip them for 50 cents. And I really got a taste of them. Like, I really like this buy low, sell high thing. And so I started doing that for several years and, made a few bucks here or there. And when I got into college, man, I had a desire. I've always been very ambitious. I had a desire to be a CEO or a CFO of a really, really large company. I don't know what it was about, the allure of that back then that really attracted me. But I started interviewing with big companies and ended up getting a job with General Electric in their financial management program. So we all have those fork in the road moments in our life. For me, one of those defining moments was like 3-4 months into my corporate job. Dude, I must have been averaging 70 to 80 hours a week. And it was evident to me that I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And so what I did was I looked at my boss, and then I looked at her boss, all the way up to like the CFO of GE Consumer Finance, which is the position I wanted to be in one day. And there was nothing further from what I wanted to do than that. Like, there was no way I could live the desired lifestyle that I had and impact the amount of people and travel. And, the thought of having to ask for vacation time. I mean, I was like, I'm not built to work for somebody else. So, dude, long story, somewhat short, I finished that 2-year program. I went backpacking around Europe. I was partying in Ibiza when a buddy of mine, I was in an internet cafe, a buddy of mine sent me an email. He's like, hey, there's this marketing for deals boot camp in Atlanta, Georgia. I'll never forget. This is October 14th, 2005. It was $997. I have funded the entire backpacking trip, 3.5 months backpacking all around Europe. I'd funded the whole thing on my credit card. I was going to be going back to Miami, moving into my parents' house at 25 years old. Not a good look, dude.
Bro.
Yeah, not a good look. So I'm like, I got to do something. I've always been interested in real estate. I've been reading like the Rich Dad Poor Dads and Think and Grow Rich. So I'm like, screw it. Let's do it. I'll go to this boot camp. I attended it, got back home. I ripped out one of the pre-foreclosure letters that was in the manual, and I just started making photocopies. And it's one of those things I kind of laugh at because I'll never forget. But it was so ghetto, Stratton, that you could literally see the black 3 holes on the side of the paper from the photocopy machine. And I started stuffing envelopes, and I sent out my first direct mail pre-foreclosure campaign. 2 to 2.5 months later, ended up closing a deal that was $44,000.
What? $44,000 and what? And so what year is this? 2005, 2006?
So we closed that deal January 2006. So I sent out that first campaign like right when I got back, like basically end of October 2005. Now I want to go and I want to stress that that is not typical. My first deal was a rather large one. My next several deals were like 5 to 10 grand profit. So I was fortunate that my first one was a pretty juicy, but yeah, man, I made so many mistakes and learned a ton along the way.
What's going on, Zach?
Zach Ginn.
My man.
Good guy, man.
So what did your business look like when the crash happened, right? You actually went through it, and it sounds like you gained some momentum. Yeah. So like, did you have to make any big pivots? What was that all about?
Yeah, man. So not only did the crash happen, to our economy, the crash kind of happened in my world. So I had experienced a level of success wholesaling for the first couple of years. And I thought it'd be a good idea to get involved in my first rehab on a $500,000 project. So we can get into the nuts and bolts of that particular deal. But long story short, we ended up losing $102,000 between myself and a partner. So I lost $51K. And that was extremely painful. That happened as the market completely started to shift. So one of the things that I realize now that I didn't back then is I've always kind of been Stratton like a ready, fire, aim type of guy, meaning that I'm ambitious. When I see something, I set a plan, I go get it. Back then, I wasn't checking inventory levels. I wasn't seeing what was happening on a micro and a macro level. Dude, I was just going. I was sending out marketing. I was talking to sellers, meeting with sellers without paying attention to like the big picture. Like, hey, I wasn't, it didn't hit me that like anybody that could breathe, anybody that had a pulse could qualify for $500,000 loan. And like, what impact would that have on the real estate market? So man, we were just doing deals. And I'm just fortunate that losing that amount of money didn't put me out of the game. Yep. And it didn't discourage me. In fact, what it did was it motivated me. And that was what got me to open my mind about, hey, if I would have had a mentor or a coach in my corner, I would have never gotten involved in that deal. So yeah, man, I mean, there's a lot more we can go from there, but that was my introduction to the crash of our economy is me losing 51 grand as a result.
I don't think you would have stopped regardless of the outcome. Even if that crushed you, you would have kept going.
Yeah, 100%. Right? Yeah.
Like nothing would have changed. When did you start to get mentors? Like when did you start really paying into education?
2008. So right after that deal. Again, man, when I come to the realization that I want something and I'm willing to invest in myself. Back then, prior to that deal, I always saw coaches and mentors as an expense. And then when I lost 51 grand, I was like, if I would have paid that particular mentor who I identified would have been really valuable in my life and business. It was 5 grand. I would have saved $46,000. That's the way I saw it. That was a $46,000 swing. And then here's the thing about coaches and mentors, the knowledge you gain from them, the experience, because they've walked down that path. Now nobody can take that away from you. Now you can take that moving forward to grow. So ever since 2008, I have had a coach and or been involved in a mastermind. So for the last 13 years, I've had, coaches. And in fact, today I have coaches in different areas of my life, whether it's health, spiritual, business / life, etc.
Really? When did you start getting more out of what's called the business aspect and going into other coaches?
2011, 12. So this is kind of a long story, but I'll skip to the end. In 2009, I got an envelope that was about this thick, and I'm not even kidding. It's almost about an inch thick, and it was certified mail, green certified. And guess who you think it was from? Take a wild guess.
The man.
The IRS, my friend. The IRS. So, dude, my 2006, 7, and 8 taxes were never filed. And so remember how I told you I was always kind of like a ready, fire, aim? Well, I was just interested in doing deals and helping people and making money. And I hated the books, the accounting, that aspect of it. And for me, I wanted it out of sight, out of mind. So, man, I hired a bookkeeper. And I completely abdicated my responsibilities. I met with him one time. I said, here's my stuff, just take care of my books, file my taxes. And that sounds so stupid, right? Like how naive could I have been to think that I can just hire someone, meet with him for a couple of hours so he gets to understand me and my business. And then I completely just turn everything over to him and I never have to check in on it. I'm good. Like, that's how naive and dumb I was. Well, it bit me in the ass, dude, because I owed a little bit over 125 grand to the IRS from,
yeah. Oh my God.
So check this out. This is 2009. This is on the heels of me losing a bunch of money from that failed rehab. We're in an economy that obviously is pretty depressed. And now I find out that I owe 6 figures to the IRS. And if you know anything about owing money to the IRS, yes, you can you can try to do things like offering compromise, but I had been making too much money and I didn't qualify. And the penalties and the interest are pretty stiff and they're very, very aggressive. So, dude, for a couple of days, man, I was in a pretty dark place. I was like, how am I going to get out of this hole? Like, I didn't know what I could do. I ended up hiring a coach. There's several things I did. One of the things I did was I hired a life and business coach. And happy to say that within a 3 to 3.5 year period, I ended up paying the IRS all the money I owed them and completely wiped out my credit card debt in the process.
Who was the coach?
Juan Bernal. So he lives in Mexico today. He's a life and business coach. And to this day, he's a coach of mine. So since 2011, I've been working with him. 2010, 11.
Really? Where'd you find him? Like, where did you find someone? I found DM, and DM's been the biggest game changer in my life. And the other DM's people have been a bunch of other, like, through real estate stuff. But like, I've never even met a life coach.
Yeah. I am a really good friend of mine who's an entrepreneur in the health and fitness space. In fact, I've had him on my show, Armando Cruz, really good friend of mine since we were kids. Juan had been coaching Armando for several years. And, you know, as entrepreneurs, I found that it can be lonely. And so that's why I'm such a big advocate of what you and I are doing. Collaboration, connection, sharing information, joining masterminds. Like, we have to have an outlet to communicate with each other. And back then I wasn't a part of a mastermind. He was my outlet, Armando, because he was an entrepreneur in a different space and I could bounce things off of him. And he said, you know, I really think you could benefit from working with this guy. And so I set up a call with him. He was the real deal. I vetted him. And man, that guy had more belief in me at that time than I had in myself. And that's what I needed, man. I needed a boost of confidence, and I needed to know that I could do this. In fact, man, I'm not embarrassed to admit that at one point I considered bankruptcy. Again, I'm very ambitious, dude. I'm very I felt like a failure at the time because I didn't see a way like how I was going to repay $100,000+ in debt. Mind you, the economy is not doing great. Real estate, you know, I was still doing some deals, but not to the level I had done the first 3-4 years in business. And yeah, man, I put my nose to the grindstone. I just focused one step ahead of me, and I persevered. And I think hopefully that story can resonate with people, because regardless of what challenge you might be dealing with, whether it's health, you know, relationships, finances, business, you can overcome those things, but you have to believe in yourself first. And then you got to put the work in. Like, it's not just going to fall in your lap, dude. And people live in a microwave society these days. You know, they see you on social media and they say, oh, Stratton has this level of success. I want to hit the fast forward button there. But they don't know all the sacrifice and the years that you've put in to get to where you are now. And I know you're a young guy, but that applies to anybody that is successful. So,
well, and what's it called? The social media and the podcast is an amplifier. Like, people think I make significantly more money than I do.
Yeah. Well,
just because I have a podcast, right? Like, I'm on here on the internet talking to people, and they think I'm making millions of dollars a year. Like, no, bro, I don't make that much. But whatever reason, shows that somehow on social media. And I don't even post flaunty stuff.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Social media has people messed up in the wrong way. And social media is it's a powerful tool, and it can be used for so much good. But I think it's so easy to fall victim and trapped to seeing what others are doing, but you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And you see people like flashing and flexing and doing all these things. And then you're like, well, I want to kind of go down that path, but you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And then you have to ask yourself, whenever I set a goal to do something, I always run it through a couple filters. And one of those filters is this what I truly want and why? Or is it because I saw it on the exterior? Is it because I saw it on social media? Is it because I saw Stratton that just, closed this deal and now I want to go in this direction, right? So shiny object syndrome is a real thing. And that's why, I learned years ago from the Life and Air organization, the importance of having a clear vision for your life and then building a business around that lifestyle to support and enhance the kind of life you want to live.
When did you join Life and Air?
I joined Life. So I attended one of their 3-day events, which is basically designed to help you walk out of there with a clear vision. That was 2013. And I actually ended up joining their mastermind 2017 and was a part of that for 2-3 years.
And then you have your mastermind, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Steve Kavanaugh and I run Ascend, which is.
I didn't know it was Steve too.
Yeah. Steve, you know what? Yeah. Steve Kavanaugh and I.
Know that.
Yeah, man. It's we just crossed over our 2-year anniversary. So Ascend was born a couple of years ago and it's been going phenomenally well.
What made you want to start it? I want to start one.
There's so many answers to that question, but the first is, and maybe we can talk about this if you want, but I had been running a wholesaling operation for 15, 16 years. And, about a year and a half ago, our team got to 9 people. And you ever had that, and maybe you haven't experienced this because I know you're so young, but maybe you have. Have you ever experienced you were meant to do something bigger with your life? Maybe it's a gut feeling, it's a tap on the shoulder. Well, I had been feeling that for a while, and I didn't feel like I was serving enough people within my wholesaling business. Quite honestly, the business got a little boring to me. I had been doing it so long, and it just felt like deal after deal after deal after deal. And that sounds, hopefully it doesn't come across like I'm bragging. I'm coming across from the perspective, I was feeling like I'm not feeling challenged. I feel like I want to do something more with my life. That's part of the reason I launched the podcast, is because I have a genuine desire to help and impact people's lives. And I have gotten so much value out of masterminds and coaching that I knew that Steve and I could impact the right people at a deep level, not just in their business, but also in their life. And so that's the reason we created Ascend.
I love it. Oh, and then at what point did you come to with wholesale? And I don't want to stuck on this for too long, to where you saw the scalability of it just wasn't there anymore. And you're just like, what do I want to do now? Did that play a role into it?
Yes and no. I wouldn't say that the scale, because the wholesaling business is definitely something you can scale. I have a lot of friends that have scaled their business. What I found in my experience that didn't fit my vision is that I had built this monster. I had built this machine that was eating up about 50 grand a month in overhead. Yep. Between marketing and overhead and this and that. It was between 41 and 50 grand a month, basically, in overhead. And my margins weren't increasing. In fact, my margins were decreasing. And I had built this machine that I had to feed. And at the end of the day, when I really look at it, I'm a part of several masterminds, and I know quite a few people, well-known people, that make millions of dollars a year in top line revenue. But when you get to the meat of it, to the heart of what they actually take home and make, it's not much more than one-man shows, one-woman shows that I know out there. And so it looks sexy, and it looks, and I'm not saying it's not possible to scale a business and be highly, highly profitable. It is. But for me, I just found that I had created a business that I no longer wanted to be a part of. I got into business so that it serves me, my family, and serves others as well. And I wanted a simple business. I didn't want a complex business that had all these moving parts. So nothing bad to say about wholesaling. Wholesaling is a phenomenal vehicle to generate a bunch of cash, but then it's, what are you going to do with that cash? How are you going to put that money to work into assets that spit off cash? That's what I wish I realized early on in my career.
Oh, hands down. It's a cash machine. It's an ATM. If you're a one-man show and you can dial it in right, you can make a lot of cash fast. Yeah,
absolutely. 100%. So yeah, man, for me, scaling just, I thought I wanted it. And again, I think I got sucked into the vortex of social media, seeing people talk about, hey, we're doing 5, 10, 20 deals a month and we're making all this money. And I knew I could do that. It wasn't, I didn't doubt myself. And so we went about the business of doing it, but it wasn't what I thought it would be. And,
what did you think it would be?
What did I think it would be? Nobody's ever asked me that question. I thought it would be a lot, I don't want to say easier, because I don't shy away from challenges. In fact, I seek challenges. I thought it was going to be more smooth. Like I didn't realize how much time I was going to be spending on the management side of the business, sales trainings, just constantly tracking KPIs, testing, tweaking. Like I'm a relationships guy. I'm a big picture guy. I love to, like, that's where I feel like I'm operating within my genius zone, my unique ability. But what I found was when I started to scale the business and build that team, I found myself in more of an operations role. And while I wasn't talking to sellers and doing the marketing and talking to buyers, I had the team to do all that. I found myself spending a lot of time in management and putting out fires. And it just wasn't that wasn't what I wanted.
Okay.
Yep.
The operations role gets hard, and you're more of the visionary, right? And you just want to think big picture, connect with people. I feel like we're a lot of the same way in that aspect.
Yep, 100%. And by the way, I think it's coming across, obviously, like when you build a business, when you're the entrepreneur, there's going to be fires. I mean, that's inevitable. And you have to be a leader. And so I wasn't shying away from that. I was just, at the end of the day, building a business that I didn't believe could be sold. And it was a business that wasn't generating cash flow. It was a transactional business. Do a deal, close the deal, move on to the next. And it felt like I was almost on this like hamster wheel of a business that I created. And I don't know about you, but that's not why I got into business.
No.
So, I learned a lot about realizing that wasn't my identity. My business didn't make up who I was. And that it was, one of the things I learned was that when you know something's not right, whether it's a gut feeling or it's just your passion, or you don't have that passion, your heart's not into it, it's so much quicker to rip the Band-Aid off than to just let the business bleed out. And that's what I didn't want to do, because my team, I owed it to my team to be honest with them.
So how did you go about turning it off?
Yeah. So first of all, I had a very open, honest conversation with my team individually and then as a company. And, I was there for them. I made sure that I supported them. I made sure that they were going to be in good hands. Whether that was me looking for opportunities for them or that was me working with them over the course of 3-4 months. And yeah, so it took about, I think I had conversation with my team February of 2020. And then ironically enough, like a month later, the COVID hits, right? And by the way, so this decision had absolutely nothing to do with COVID. When I made the decision, COVID wasn't even like a thought in my brain. And then, so that just kind of sped up the process, if anything.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's as a leader, you have to be open and transparent with your team, and I'm such a big believer in just, when you speak your truth, you should be able to live with the result, and that doesn't mean that it's not going to be difficult and you're not going to have challenging conversations with people. But I think you gotta be open and honest and shoot people straight. Don't BS people. There's too much of that going on. Yeah. And people will appreciate it, even if it's hard news.
How did you overcome, and I asked you this question, I was like, how did you overcome the identity crisis of no longer being a real estate guy? Well, a wholesaler is one thing I somewhat went through.
The short answer, and then I can elaborate, is by being vulnerable. So on my podcast, I wasn't going to do this because, here I am. I host this podcast called The Flip Empire Show, which is so much more than just about real estate, right? But I had been doing this for so long, and I'm fortunate and grateful that I was in a position where sometimes people would come to me for questions and advice, and I almost felt like I was letting people down to a certain degree if they knew that I was no longer actively building and scaling a wholesaling operation. And I realized that people weren't coming to me necessarily because I had an active wholesaling operation. It was because of my experience, and it was because of the insight, maybe the perspective that I could share with them, and the fact that I was just going to be brutally honest. I wasn't going to BS people. And dude, you and I are so much more than our businesses. We're so much more than any money we make. That doesn't define who we are, right? Like our core values, our principles, like that's what defines who we are. How we show up to our families, our friends, the community, how we impact people. That's what makes up who we are, in my opinion. And once I realized that like my business is a separate entity. That's not who Alex Pardo is. That's my business. It was easy for me to create a podcast and just kind of share with people like, hey, look, this is my journey. This is why I made this decision. And it was like it almost felt like a big like bag of bricks just came off my shoulder. And now I'm happier, making more money. And I just feel more fulfilled, which honestly is the most important part.
I mean, it's a big step. Like, and it's your baby too. Like, it's something that you've built for, like, it's almost 18 years, right? So you took this kid from infancy all the way up, and then you kind of just let it go, which is hard. My parents are going through the same thing as they are deciding what they want to do with their businesses. So I want to know how you vetted out that life coach. Like, how did you vet the dude out and make sure he was legit?
Yeah, well, and I don't know how useful or valuable this is going to be for people because I can't translate this. But one of the things that I've always trusted, and 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10 times when I trust it serves me well, is my intuition, my gut. And so I looked him up on social media, and he wasn't to this day, he's not a big influencer or anything like that. He's just a real guy with real world experience. And not just, one of the things that really sold me on him was, aside from the fact that I had several conversations with him and we had intimate, deep conversations, he was a marriage counselor. And I was in a period of my life where I was dating, and I knew that, I wanted to start a family pretty soon. I wanted to meet the right woman. I wanted to have kids. And so we had conversations, not just about business, not just about how I could create a plan to climb out of this 6-figure debt. But we had just meaningful life conversations about relationships and about impact and giving. And I knew in this person, this is so much more than a business coach. And this is someone who, successful entrepreneur, had several successful businesses. And so I knew I could get fed from a business perspective. But honestly, that's not the hard part. That's just the X's and O's of how to build a business and make money. We can all gain that. But, this is somebody who, he had actually just lost his wife to cancer. He was married for 20 plus years. And you ever talk to somebody that just has so much wisdom, and you could tell their life experience, they have so much to share and give. And man, we just connected. And to this day, he's my coach. So
I mean, that's how I felt about you, right? We sit there and we talk at dinner forever. And I was like, oh yeah, this guy has a ton to offer me, and I love exactly where all his headspace is, because these are the questions I'm asking myself.
Wow, man. Well, that honestly, that really does. I genuinely mean this when I said that means a lot. Coming from you. So thank you. But it's so important, Stratton, that we put ourselves in these environments and we build relationships with people, because how different could my life have been had I not met that person? Who knows? Right. And the only reason I met that person was because of a close relationship with another friend, another entrepreneur. And so, relationship capital, I was talking about this with Ian this morning. Relationship capital to me is so much more valuable than any amount of money. It's about your network, and it's about how deep those relationships are.
How do you invest into all these relationships? Because that's my number one thing. I think relationship capital is number one over anything.
Yeah, great question. I think you have to be very genuine and sincere about wanting to help people. I have to find a better word or words for add value. But if you come up with something, let me know. But because I feel like it's so overused. But you have to genuinely want to help people. If I can share this example, Kalani, who is awesome. I met you and Kalani at a mastermind several months ago. We're all, the three of us are kind of on our similar path with when it comes to storage. Yep. We're all pretty new, and we're all learning so much. And I genuinely want to help people. And I remember I had shared about what I was doing to build a list and my direct mail, and Kalani reached out to me. And I remember we spoke pretty much right away. And vice versa. There's been people in the storage industry that I don't know how this works. And I've reached out to them. And I think, how do you build relationships? I think you genuinely put other people's interests before yours. You want to genuinely see people succeed. And then you're very intentional and proactive about seeking and building those relationships. Every now and then I reach out to people, and I'll create, a simple 20-second video, and I'll text it to somebody. And that video could be, hey, just checking in on you, want to see how you're doing. If you need anything, reach out. And it's personalized. It's not like I'm creating one video and sending it out to 20 people. So I think you just have to have a heart for wanting to connect with people, and do so not because you want to get something in return. Do something because it's the cool thing to do, and it feels good to help people and to have an impact on people's lives.
Right. My big thing, and I like the voice messages so it doesn't take up their time, but I just FaceTime people on their birthday. right? And that
Love it.
it's a lot more than a phone call, right? You
Yeah.
FaceTime them, tell them you care, tell them you love them, then you just keep on pushing. And then I think gifts are massive. What's it
Yeah,
called?
man.
Bro, Ian wrote me a handwritten letter when I went on this podcast and gave me a book. I was like, oh, I got to start doing that because like it meant so much, and that
Yeah.
relationship capital, it was amazing. So yeah,
Yep.
it's
Yep. It's funny.
classy and it means a
It's
lot to me.
Yeah, dude, it's funny. Mike Wagner, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I got something in the mail from Amazon, and it had a note, and it was from Mike Wagner from a conversation we had weeks prior about parenting, and he just bought a book for me on like parenting and sent it to me. Like, there's a book called Giftology, which I highly recommend. You know, you're watching this or you're listening to this, I highly recommend you guys check out the book Giftology. In fact, DM Mark Evans is awesome at that.
Bro, that's where I got it from. That's
Yeah.
where I got it from. And he's
Yep.
amazing at it.
He really is. He's next level with it. I mean, he even has like a giftology budget, I believe, you know, and it's cool, dude. It like what you just said, it's memorable. You know, what's that saying, Stratt? I'm probably gonna butcher it, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I may have butchered it, but you get the idea,
Yeah.
dude. So yeah, man. So that's how you build and set up a system for building relationships with people. So one of the things I like to do is, like, in the storage world, there was 10 people that I wrote down a list, and I said, I want to connect with this person in the storage world, and I want to build a relationship with them. So when you're very clear and intentional about it, you can put yourselves in those positions to connect with people and just make it about the relationship. Don't make it about how can they help you. Make it about how you can help them and how you can align yourself, like find out what their goals are and see how you can contribute and add to their goals. It could be a simple connection. It could be sending them a book. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but the fact that they know you're thinking about them goes a long way.
Yeah, the gift thing has been amazing.
Yeah.
Giftology. I just wrote that down. How have you overcome so many failures, and like what has been your mentality inside of those things, right? Because it's one thing, then another thing, and on the outside, everyone looks like, oh yeah, he's killing it, blah blah blah, and you're just sitting there like, fuck.
ain't that the truth, man? Yeah, and that's the funny thing about social media is people only highlight the wins. You know, I've had so many more L's, you know, that I've had to eat than I've had the W's.
Every day.
Dude, every day. You know, I've had a mindset shift over that the last handful of years. I've now come to embrace the losses, as challenging as they could be in the moment. I always have to focus on who I'm becoming in the process. And I've always said to myself, it's not a failure, it's not a loss if I've learned and grown from it. It's only a failure if I take the pounding, if I get knocked down and I don't get back up. You know, that's the only time you fail. You know, dude, last night, LeBron James just got knocked out of the playoffs for the first time in his career in the first round, you know, and in his press conference, and whether you like LeBron James or not, and politics aside and all that stuff, but it was just about the mindset. In the press conference, he's like, we're going to get back at it, you know, and we're going to come back better and stronger. So it's just about realizing that the destination is the journey. It's not the other way around. The destination is very short-lived. You set a goal, you accomplish it, it feels good, it's temporary, but then that new car smell goes away. And now you're setting yourself on a different goal. But if you learn to enjoy the journey on your way to the destination, that's what it's all about. And that journey is going to have a bunch of landmines and pitfalls and roadblocks. And you're going to have some battle scars along the way, but that's how you grow.
How'd you learn how to embrace the journey? Because the journey can be a goddamn shit show. Right?
Yeah, man.
So how did you learn to embrace it and make it fun and everything else?
You can't see, but books, mentors, masterminds, in short, in summary, investing in yourself. You know, I like reading. I like reading books about people that have gone through the shit, like people that have just gone through so much that it makes your life feel like a fairy tale. And you're like, the challenges I'm dealing with is nothing. You know, talk to me about, like, you know, I read stories of entrepreneurs that have lost their family members to accidents, like their family is no longer there, you know, overcoming cancer, like just overcoming sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, like, man, things that, like, I think about my challenges and it just pales in comparison. And not that you should ever compare yourself or your situation to somebody else, but, it's inspiring to think that if someone can overcome significant challenges like that, I can overcome anything I'm dealing with. It's just about mindset, and it's about pushing forward.
The book that opened my eyes to like the real problems was like Shoe Dog. I read that the other day.
Phil Knight.
Bro, that blew me away. The dude's living on the float as $100 million company. I was like, oh wow, like I think I have problems. Yeah. Like I can't imagine that amount of stress.
Yeah, it's all perspective, and it's all relative. And that, by the way, so somebody watching and listening to this, that's not to diminish any challenges you might be faced with at all, because we all have challenges, some big, some medium sized, some small. But what are you learning in the process? You're gonna go through the shit anyway, like, so you might as well get something from it. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it makes no sense if you're gonna put yourself through the agony and you're gonna endure the pain and suffering, whatever it might be. What are you gonna learn as a result? I talked to buddies of mine that unfortunately have gone through divorce, and in some cases they think it's the person they're with, but they don't realize that they're taking themselves to the next relationship, and then they get to the next relationship and it's a similar pattern. And in some cases with close friends, I've had to like say, like, dude, you got to look at yourself. Like, what's the common denominator here? You know what I mean? And God bless you. You see, I took it away. It's funny, man. I think that's happened to me once or twice on a podcast, but it was like one of those where like you put like a weird face and you're like, I can't. I saw you going down that road, so I'm like, bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah. For people not watching the video, Stratton was about to sneeze and I caught him early.
Bro, I want to talk about, so you don't think you should compare. I truly think comparing is a good thing, and I think ego is an amazing blessing. Like, I have a much different thought about ego than other people do. Ego is the enemy. I think you need to embrace it because you've been given a gift.
Okay.
Like, you've been given a gift to want more and want all these things, as long as you can keep your life aligned.
So let me ask you this, and this is your podcast, but I'm going to flip the script on you. How do you define ego?
The want, the pride, the testosterone, like all of that the Tim Groverness, the David Goggins, like I'm going to conquer, right? Just like innate man of I want to be the best. I want the biggest company, blah, blah, blah. But then you go around the way, right? And you are still building something amazing and it's driven by ego, but you're making it fit your life. But I still think that ego is very, very much there. Yeah. I don't think it's not there.
Look, I would agree. I think most of us have an ego. The question is, do you control the ego or does the ego control you? Right. And so I want people to kind of think about that for a second. So like, you just talked about it. You said something that kind of like hit a nerve with me. You said, I want to build the biggest company. That's out there for anybody. And if you have a desire to do that, do it, because you should do it because you have the ability. And if I think it was Tony Robbins that says, if you can, then you must. Just know why you're doing it, right? Are you doing it to feed your ego, or is it much bigger than you? And I think that's what can ultimately determine happiness and success. I know so many people, Stratton, that I've talked to that are extremely wealthy by most people's standards, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And in fact, I had a conversation, I won't mention his name, not too long ago, who has a $40 million company. That's what his company's currently valued at. And he said, and he's a multimillionaire. And he says, Alex, I can honestly tell you now, having the money, I feel no different today from a happiness perspective than I did 5 years ago when I didn't have this $40 million company and I wasn't a multimillionaire. And I know this guy to be extremely genuine. He's not no reason to BS me. He's like, yeah, does the money help? And can I impact more people? And do I have more options? 1,000%. And so I'm not telling you not to strive and make as much money as you can. Don't hear me wrong. But if you think the money is what's going to make you ultimately happy, I think you're going to be disappointed. So money's important. Money's very important. It's a tool. But if you think that's going to make you, in my opinion, my humble opinion, and by the way, I'm not saying money doesn't make you happy. Money can bring a lot of happiness. Like, hear me loud and clear. Money can bring a lot of happiness, but if that's what you're striving for to be happy, I think
To
you're
fill
going to
the
be
void.
disappointed. Yeah.
Yep. If you're striving for that to fill the void, I truly don't think that can make you happy. But having your bills paid, being able to take care of any family member you want, like those things truly give you genuine happiness, and then peace, happiness, and then being able to influence other people's lives, right? Donate to all these charities, start your own charity. But then, like, you see, for an example of why that's so true, Bill Gates has a massive, massive, massive foundation because, you know, he's looking for more. Like, he won capitalism. Bill Gates won capitalism. So he's trying to impact more lives.
Yep. No doubt. No doubt. And you know what? You said something interesting that reminded me of the the analogy of when you hop on an airplane, the stewardess or the flight attendant, she tells you to put your mask on first. Think of money the same way. You got to get your financial house in order before you can have a significant impact in people's lives, because if you don't have your financial house in order, you're too busy, focused, and worried about your situation to pour all of yourself into others, if that makes sense.
Hands down. And so how do you feel about comparing? And I think comparing is still good.
Okay.
If you know who you're comparing yourself to, because it keeps you in check and it lets you know if you're slacking.
That's interesting. How do I feel about comparing? For me, I don't like comparing. And this is fun. So we're on a podcast and there's no right or wrong. There's just different perspectives, right? And I want to hear your thoughts, and I want you to elaborate as well. For me, I have found that maybe this is just me, right? And I'm not saying this is what you need to do. I have found comparison doesn't motivate me. It doesn't inspire me. If anything, comparison doesn't make me feel as worthy when I know that that's just a BS story that my inner critic is telling myself, right? Like, okay. I believe that God created each and every one of us, you, me, whoever's watching this, special and unique. And that might sound like in the clouds to some people, but I truly believe each one of us were given unique talents and abilities. And I think you got to discover what that is and then tap into those things, multiply those talents. And when you're busy comparing yourself to others, I think it's taking you away from your unique ability, because what others are accomplishing, to me, that may or may not be their unique ability, but that's them. And you should lift them up and encourage them and help them if possible. But sometimes I catch myself, even to this day, and I've gotten significantly better at it. But I remember years ago, I'd look on social media and it would almost be like a competitive thing, but like not in a good way, not a good competitive, like, well, almost like I don't want to say envy or jealousy, but almost like, well, how can they accomplish that when XYZ, when I know I can, and you know what I mean? It's like I had to completely shift my mind that, like, that's them, like, let them do them, but do you. And that comes with having clarity about what you want and why you want it. So for me, I'm not a fan of comparison. I'm a fan of let me tweak that. I'm a fan of comparison if you're comparing yourself to the best version of yourself. Ed Milet talks about, Milet talks about one of the things that when he dies and goes to heaven, he wants to meet the best version of himself. And he wants the best version of himself to tell him, great job, you've arrived, or, man, there was so much more you could have done. There was so much more you could have accomplished. There was so many more people you could have impacted. And so if you're going to compare yourself to the potential within you, that's one thing. And I'm good with that. I think that's healthy. But if you're going to compare yourself to others, for me, it doesn't work.
I think it's both. I'm just too damn competitive.
That's, dude, former NFL stud, right? Former baller. So I get it, man. And I'm competitive too, man. I think that's the type A in a lot of entrepreneurs. I just get my competitive juices flowing in different ways. I get my competitive juices flowing by others challenging me. Okay. I get my competitive juices by setting the bar high. But if I see you, for example, knocking out a podcast a day, and all of a sudden you start interviewing the Mark Cubans of the world and Elon Musk, and I'm not thinking to myself, damn, how did Stratton, I've been podcasting longer than Stratton. How did he get Elon Musk? How did he get Mark? I'm happy for you. I'm encouraging you. I'm sharing the podcast. And if anything, I'm saying that's incredible. I feel inspired, but not coming from a place of like, well, I'm going to have a better podcast than Stratt, and I'm going to have a bigger guest. It doesn't come from that place, you know?
No, but it I don't know. It's the inspiring of, oh, damn, like we got to do more. Like so much more is possible, right? And it opens it up. Like, oh man, like what's it called? I was talking to Pace the other day. I started a company 6 months after him, and his company, I'm at 80 something employees, right? Just for relative size, and he scaled up to 500, and it completely opened my eyes. And this isn't a 2-year span, of what he built it to.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my god, like we got to do more.
But you see, like, man, I guess I would push back. I don't see that as you comparing yourself to him. I see that as you being inspired and motivated by what he's done. But to me, I'm not, at least the way I look at it, I don't think that's a comparison game.
To me, it's comparing company sizes and what you were able to achieve, right? Because like I love people making achievements. Like you're achieving cool stuff. Like me getting on my podcast is an achievement. Okay, I scaled my company to X amount this fast. That's an achievement for me. If that person can do it, I can for sure do it. So that's where that comparing comes to it, to where it's the ego. It's hands down the ego, right? Like to where that ego is the only reason I am where I am. That ego is the only reason I was in good sports. Right. To where that ego is the only reason somewhat, right? That ego is there telling you need to be a better father than everybody else, right? Like you need to be doing all of these things. That's where that comes from. At least for me.
It's that drive. I think we're saying the same thing. Maybe we just think about it and approach it a little bit different. But no, the ego's a real thing. I just think you gotta be in control of your ego, not have your ego. That's why, you know, egomaniacs. Like you don't want to be an egomaniac, right? In my opinion, but I think the ego is an important thing, and you got to feed it. You just got to be in control of it at the same time.
Hands down. And so we'll switch over to business a little bit more now. What businesses are you doing?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about storage, and I want to hear about whatever else you want.
Yeah. So, you know, despite what some people might think, because I'm no longer running an active wholesaling operation, I'm still very much in the real estate business. I think I always will be. It's a real estate, believe it or not, is not my passion, but it's a vehicle that I've identified that I enjoy, that I'm good at, that can help me serve my purpose at a larger scale. You know, obviously, Steve and I run Ascend, which is a high-level mastermind and coaching community. I still have some single-family rentals out in Cleveland, Ohio. You know, still do some joint venture lending and things of that nature, and then self-storage. You know, so I got involved in self-storage. I made the decision in December, and you know, you and I we're just talking about this before the podcast. I am on the heels of going under contract on my first facility, 43,000 square foot facility. Currently involved in one other transaction, that a self-storage facility that we're wholesaling that just didn't fit the criteria. Yeah. So you'll hear more about that soon, but it's proving to be a pretty good deal. And so, yeah, you know, so the self-storage is one of those vehicles that fits my vision from a cash flow perspective, from the fact that I don't have to go out and have a bunch of employees and build this massive operation. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You know, you can scale without having to incur a lot of the overhead that maybe building a traditional business would bring.
Exactly. Is that the main reason why you chose it? The next question is, why did you choose storage over the other asset classes?
Well, that's one of the reasons. I don't know if it's the main one. One of the things I love about storage, dude, is that it's a business, but you get the benefits of real estate.
Yeah.
You know, and people don't realize that it's a business. That's what it is. But you get the benefits of real estate. And you know, obviously I did a lot of research. You know, I looked at commercial asset classes on my podcast. I did debate shows, you know, single family versus multifamily, storage versus mobile home parks. And I was in a phase where I was checking out a lot of different asset classes, commercial asset classes. And I kept reading that in down markets, in a downturn, storage is one of the asset classes that tends to produce the best, you know? And then in the e-com world that we live in, where people are constantly buying things online, we're in a great market. People buy stuff, they need storage. We're in a down market. People downsize, they need storage. Obviously, no toilets and things of that nature. Expense ratios are significantly lower than compared to like multifamily asset class. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of boxes that it checked for me.
Okay. I know. Yep. I love the tenant stuff, right? Because I personally don't like tenants. I'm somewhat of an asshole to where like, no, just pay your rent. I pay my bills. Just pay your bills. That's all you have to do.
Hey, dude, just pay and we're good, man. Just pay
Just
and we're
pay
good.
your bills and we'll be fine.
Yeah. And obviously, as you know, Stratton, with storage, when you one of the ways to increase the value of the property is to raise rents. Most of the time, these are nuisance raises. You're raising at $5, you're raising at $10.
Right.
Most of the time, that's not enough of a raise. Versus if you were to raise $100 or $200 or $300 in a single family, there's a decent possibility that you could lose that tenant.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, I'm enjoying the self-storage niche. I really am.
Okay. And then as I'm winding this down, I want to ask you a couple more questions about how you developed as a leader and then what your biggest failures have been.
Yeah. So wow, let me tackle the last one first. I've already mentioned some of those big failures, which is, entrusting my books and my all that to somebody I just met and finding out 3 years later. So that was a big failure. Honestly, when I was prior to getting married, I was having a hard time balancing running multiple businesses at the same time. I got heavily involved in the information marketing space and did a big product launch and was building an internet business while at the same time building the wholesaling business. And for me, I found that if I just gave one business all of my energy and attention, I could build it bigger and faster versus, simultaneously trying to run multiple businesses. Now I know so much better. Back then, my biggest failure was that I was the one trying to do the heavy lifting in both of the businesses. Now I realize that you need leverage, and I'm not talking about necessarily money, but you need to manufacture time. How do you do that? You do that with team members. You do that by hiring. You do that with collaborations and joint ventures. Getting really, really clear. That was another failure. Not getting clear on my unique ability, not getting clear on my talents, and then operating in a space where I wasn't fulfilling my talents. I was doing stuff that's not my natural gifts.
Yep.
But when you figure out what your gifts are, and then you spend most of your time on that, dude, it's a launching pad. It really is. So there's a ton of mistakes. I mean, we could talk for hours about hiring mistakes I've made and, things of that nature, management. But from a leadership perspective, Stratton, man, there's so much I've learned about leadership. First of all, your team has to know that when times get challenging and things get difficult, that you're willing to roll up your sleeves and jump in there with them. And one of the things that I've always led with is core values. So whether you're building a big business or you have a small lifestyle business, get crystal clear on what your core values are, and why your business exists. Make sure that you communicate that to your team members, make sure there's buy-in, and then make sure that you align yourself with people on your team that it's much more than just a paycheck. It's because they track with your core values. They live your core values. And in fact, when I was building a team, I had several team members that said, I knew they could make more money elsewhere or doing something else, but it was because of the culture that we had built. It's because of the camaraderie. It's about the core values. And the fact that, 1 + 1, I believe, can make equal 10. And with a team, there's so much more you can accomplish than by yourself. So, man, I'm drawing a blank. There's what's the guy that I'm drawing a blank on his name? There's a leadership expert out there that I've read so many of his books, and I'm having a brain. John Maxwell. I was going to say the guy's authored 80 something books. When it comes to leadership, he is like my go-to dude.
Yep.
Right. And it's so important from a leadership perspective. The last thing I'll end on is that you have to know what makes the people that you work with and the people that you collaborate with, what makes them tick, right? Like what motivates them, and speak their language. One of the books in my relationship with my wife, the love language book. And so once I read that book, it was kind of a game changer because I identified, okay, that's my wife's love language and she knows my love language. And when there was conflict, it was most likely because we weren't speaking each other's love languages. Same thing applies in business. If you're in a leadership perspective, what's your team members' love language, right? Like, how are they motivated? Why are they driven? And it's important that you don't, Phil Jackson didn't coach Michael Jordan the same way he coached, Luke Longley, for example, right? Like different players, different personalities, different ambitions. Like, so as a leader, you have to adapt and adjust to the person that you're working with and the person that you're leading.
Bro, that's gold. All right, I got one last thing. How did you find your unique ability? What?
Yeah, man. So that's an easy one. So there's a gentleman by the name of Dan Sullivan, who is the founder and owner of Strategic Coach. And years ago, when one of my coaches actually was the one that put me onto this exercise, it's called the Genius Zone exercise. So if you guys just Google Dan Sullivan Genius Zone, you'll see, but I'll kind of, in a minute or two, I'll highlight what the exercise is. The exercise is, there's an email template out there online, which I'm sure you can find. And basically you send this email to 15 to 20 people that know you. And it should be a mix of people. It should be family. It should be friends. It should be coworkers. It should be people you've worked with, just a mix of people, a variety of people that know Stratton, for example. And the gist of the email is, from your perspective, what is it that you see in me that comes easy and natural to me? Another way to put it is, what do you see in me as my superpower, right? What comes so natural to me that I might not even realize it? And heads up, you're going to have to follow up with people. You're going to have to be persistent, and you might even have to be a little annoying because people have busy lives and they're probably not going to get it back to you right away. But if you can collect at least 12 to 15 responses, I believe that exercise can be eye-popping for you. So when I went through this exercise, it's funny because I got all the responses. I got about 18 responses. I had my wife, who's an Excel wizard, put it on Excel and basically highlight the common denominators. One of the things, Stratton, that people saw in me that I never saw in myself was they said, you're a natural and gifted connector and communicator. And I never, ever saw myself as a connector or a communicator. But yet 18 people that I basically said, hey, what do you think is my superpower? The overwhelming majority said that in one way or another, you're a connector and a communicator. And when I really started to think about it, I'm like, yeah, you're right, because I do this and I do that. And then once I had that realization and that awareness, I started to actually lean into it. And I started to now connect more people. And by the way, I did that exercise maybe 8-9 months before I launched the podcast. I don't know that I would have launched the podcast had I known and had I seen myself as a communicator. Right. So that's how I found my unique ability. Awesome.
We'll round it up on that, man. Thank you so much. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, a couple places. Host a podcast called The Flip Empire Show. Shows come out every Monday and Thursday morning. So if you go to flipempire.com/podcast, that'll take you right to Apple Podcasts. And then our mastermind and coaching community is another place to connect. Ascendyoursuccess.com. Ascendyoursuccess.com.
And then what's going on, Eric? We didn't forget about you, man.
Eric, good dude.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys have a great day.
Take care, man. Thanks, Stratton.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Winning Move Podcast. I hope it helps you make all the right moves in your life and business. Please make sure to go like and subscribe on any podcast platform that you're listening to. And make sure to go follow me on Instagram @StrattDaddy. Thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you soon.